Hi, everyone, and thanks for taking the time to join us today. My name is Liam Maroney, and I am the Demand Generation Manager here at NewsCred, and I'm delighted to be joined by the Director of Content Marketing at AdRoll, Gregory Kennedy. Gregory is a former designer and creative director. Gregory's writing has been published in a number of publications, including the BBC, VentureBeat, Yahoo Finance, and Entrepreneur.com. So just before we begin, I'm just going to get some quick housekeeping tips out of the way. The webinar is set to last about 40 minutes, and at the end we're going to be answering some of your questions. If you do have a question, feel free to ask it at any stage during the webinar, and we'll bring them up at the end. And of course, don't forget to join in the conversation on Twitter using the hashtag ThinkContent and using the Twitter handles at NewsCred and at AdRoll. So now that we've gotten the logistics out of the way, I am delighted to turn you over to Gregory.
Hey, thanks, Liam. So that was a great intro, and I just want to thank NewsCred for hosting this webinar today. We're really excited to partner with them. They're one of the leaders in content marketing, and I'm really excited about content marketing. I've been in digital marketing, digital advertising, and digital media for most of my career, like Liam said. I've been a designer, creative director, worked at big advertising agencies, switched to the marketing side, and now do a lot of writing. Happy to be here at AdRoll leading our content marketing efforts. Just a little bit about AdRoll. Like you see our rollabout VW bus that we did as a promotional for our launch for the Sydney office in Australia. We drove that bus around the country. AdRoll is a performance marketing platform, and we're well known for our retargeting product. Retargeting, just for people who don't know all that much about display advertising, started out as a way to drive conversions for retailers who had abandoned shopping carts. So people would go on the site, they would shop, they would look at items, they would put things in their cart, and they wouldn't buy them, and people realized that we could target display advertising at those people after they had put something in their shopping cart. They'd click through, and lo and behold, they would buy. It worked really well. It worked so well, in fact, that it's applied to almost every other aspect of digital media, websites, apps, watching what people do, understanding their behaviors, tagging different parts of your application, your website, and then targeting ads to those segments. So it's used in B2B marketing. When people go to a pricing page, you can target ads and help drive conversions there. Retail, we already talked about. Travel is really popular. It's pretty pervasive across most of the internet today. And of course, AdRoll has expanded. We offer a lot of other display marketing services, and we're really excited about content marketing and found it to be really successful for AdRoll. So I'm just going to paint a picture of like my kind of overview and outlook of the space and give you some tips on how you can improve your content marketing. All right, a little slow there, sorry about that. So in the consumer space, I see content marketing everywhere. There's just recipes, craftrecipes.com, which they claim over 1 billion views a year. It's not clear to me exactly how they get those billion views. They don't provide a lot more detail other than that number. It's possible that it's mostly through SEO. Some of it's probably traffic that they buy. But what I do know is that 1 billion is a really big number, and to achieve 1 billion page views through paid and a mix of organic or SEO is a big achievement, and I think any brand, any food brand in particular, would be ecstatic to have that kind of success. I think it's a fantastic example of like how consumer marketing has been embracing content marketing. And the recipes on there are fantastic. I went and took a look because I was very skeptical at the beginning to see what they were, and some of them were useful. Not all of them were useful, but I did enjoy some of them and found it to be like an excellent destination. Pepsi.com is a great example of the type of work that NewsCred is doing. They're powering it globally. What I really like about Pepsi.com is it's the next generation of how people or marketers are embracing the internet and digital technology. You know, I got into digital pretty early, and up till recently, the approach generally has been like reproduce, reiterate, redo what you've been doing on television and duplicate a television style experience on the internet, right? Pepsi.com takes this to a whole new level, and they provide relevant content, news content, sports, entertainment, things that consumers love, and they associate the Pepsi brand with it. They're really providing something unique and different than what I think a lot of these youth brands have been doing in the past with their website. I think the value becomes instantly clear, especially if you go into this site and you take some time as a marketer to kind of look at what they're doing in other countries, and you'll see how the content shifts for Australia or the UK. It's impressive. And what I like the most about it is they're providing real value to the end user, and I'm sure that that's why it's successful. B2B marketers are also embracing content marketing. CMO.com is a property that Adobe has developed. They have, at least from the information I can get, $1 million budget. They have a couple editors who run it. But what I really like about this is that it's not seen as something that's just shilling for Adobe products. It's a well-respected publication in the marketing industry. I've been published on there. Our CMO has been published on there. People are excited about getting featured on CMO.com. They feature relevant, high-quality content, and it's an excellent, excellent example of people like making a big investment in true content and just reaping the benefits of their brand being associated with it. So Nanigans is a marketing platform in a similar space to AdRoll. They specialize in Facebook marketing, and a lot of B2B platforms have been doing what they've been doing, which is providing data reports, research, giving people hard numbers across their marketing platform that marketers can use to plan and benchmark what they're doing. So the Nanigans quarterly report gives an aggregated benchmark of what performance metrics look like across the Nanigans platform. They provide like a CPM number, they provide some kind of conversion numbers, they provide other numbers, which was very difficult to get in the old days. I don't know if people had remembered media buying even 5 years ago, but to understand a benchmark of where you fit in the spectrum on a platform was almost impossible to get. Only big agencies could get it because they happened to actually be buying themselves across multiple customers and understood what the performance was. But today, people like Nanigans, a lot of other app platforms have been providing this data, and it's become an essential part of planning for a lot of marketers. But what really gets me excited about content marketing is that digital content marketing is the most scalable approach that we've ever seen. So traditional media, I went and dug up these numbers just to kind of iterate like what scale digital media can achieve. So the largest magazine in circulation is a publication called The Watchtower. I've never read it, but it reaches 52 million people a month. It's done in like 47 languages or something. The largest televised event everyone knows is the Super Bowl, and the largest Super Bowl was the Seahawks Patriots at 114 million viewers. And the largest radio program is Tom Kent, someone I'm not actually familiar with, but he's able to reach 23 million listeners a week. That's not bad. When you look at digital media, the numbers are just staggering. So Facebook, everyone knows, 1.4 billion users. You've got WhatsApp at 700 million users. You've got LinkedIn at 468 million users. You've got Instagram at 300 million users. Twitter, 280 million users. Tumblr, 230 million users. Even Tumblr's scale dwarfs the largest traditional media venue by double. It's incredible. And we're only scratching the surface. Like, digital media is only going to get bigger, more pervasive, and more popular. Like, Facebook continues to grow. Like, 1.4 billion is not the maximum scale that Facebook is going to reach. It's just going to keep going and going and going. What I always like to point out is that to deliver 52 million printed magazines a month is an incredible challenge. And let's just say it costs $1 each. It costs more. You would need a budget of $52 million just to deliver that on a monthly basis, right? Digital content marketing can be done at scale for a fraction of the cost of traditional media and traditional marketing. So I think that this shift has been driven by the change in media consumption habits. So you look at the data, it's only been the last 3 years that digital has consumed more time than television. So digital went to 4 hours and 51 minutes 2013, and it's now at 5 hours and 38 minutes in 2015, right? Television, it hasn't actually declined. It's declined slightly. It stayed steady. It's like 4 hours and 31 minutes. Now it's 4 hours and 15 minutes. But it's this tipping point that we've reached that is why marketers are now scrambling ultimately to find ways to invest in digital and invest in content marketing. Like that craft recipes, I think, is very new for craft. And what they're seeing is this data, that 57% of millennials spend time watching television on their computer or on a tablet or on a smartphone. They're time shifting. They're not watching ads. They're skipping the ads. They're downloading them and deleting the ads out. Television advertising is just not reaching millennials at all. And for adult people in the United States, it's reaching them a lot less. So if you're a brand like Kraft or Pepsi, where you've built this brand and your entire organization is designed to deliver your content through television, you have to make a change. The numbers are clear that people aren't watching things of viewership pretty rapidly if you dig in and look at what young people are doing. But what it's very exciting about content marketing is not only is it effective, but consumers like it. So I pulled these stats from a NewsCred content marketing piece. And this first one I love. So 90% of consumers find custom content useful. 78% believe that organizations providing custom content are interested in building a good relationship with them. So I think the Nannigan's data report is the best example of this. That is actual information that media planners, app marketers, that people need and people are using, and it's making their business better. It's got real tangible results at the end, that piece of content. And if I got that content from Nannigan's, I would be excited too. 68% of consumers spend time reading content or brand they're interested in. I think Pepsi has nailed it. So they're providing sports, entertainment, information that consumers love, and they're associating the Pepsi brand with it, and consumers like it, and they prefer it, I would say, over television commercials. 70% of consumers prefer to get to know a company over articles instead of advertising. I think that's pretty obvious when you think of like your own personal experience. Like, would you rather go to craftrecipes.com, get the recipe you want, and cook something with a craft product or without a craft product? Or would you rather watch a television commercial about craft? I'm betting that, and it looks like close to 1 billion people have decided that getting a recipe from Kraft is actually something really useful, and they really enjoy it. But I think content marketing, it's still new, and the entire industry for the last 40 years was designed around interruption-driven, high production value television advertising. And so we understand this world, like there's content that your company likes, there's content that people like, and maybe television advertising confused everybody into like really being honest with themselves about which side of the spectrum that you're at. So we know that you need to be in this middle space here, but I think the reality is that most people are actually far to the right. And I would make the statement that most television advertising ends up over here. It's really talking about the company, and it's providing information that the company likes. And the reason that they've been successful is they pay handsomely to interrupt the content that people actually like to deliver their marketing message, right? So there's a big shift that needs to happen in your organization, and it's over to the left. You need to focus on creating content that people actually like. So to some degree, you could describe it as perhaps merging the content that people were liking and people were being interrupted with, or it's perhaps thinking about new ways to develop content that people like. But the shift to the left is important, and it's something that most organizations need to figure out. But at the end of the day, I think that making that shift is hard. So even though the best organizations have great people and they have great ideas, they need to be fantastic at actually executing. And that is a very different thing from just having great ideas and just hiring great people. And I think that that's what's separating the real high achieving companies from the other ones, is that they're able to execute on this. I think my favorite example of a company that just not only has great ideas, not only has great people, but just executes is Facebook. The way that they're able to transform the app space overnight with their app and their approach to app marketing and their approach to advertising, I think it is unparalleled, and they just continue to execute at a level that's really high. So when I talk about this with my team, I always want everyone to find their inner Yoda, and we use this mantra: do or do not, there is no try. So here are my tips for improving your content marketing. I call it the 5 ways of content marketing kung fu. And I don't know how many people out there are like big Bruce Lee fans like I am, but I'm a huge Bruce Lee fan. And I use this analogy because what I love about Bruce Lee is that he does not actually practice kung fu. He invented his own martial art called Jeet Kune Do. And in the martial arts world, he's actually known as a heretic. What Bruce Lee did was go to all the different martial arts out there, and he practiced kung fu, and he practiced karate, and he practiced all kinds of different martial arts. And he was incredibly gifted, talented, dedicated, hardworking scholar who spent his lifetime like understanding and educating himself about all of these different things. And what he did was take all the best elements from these different martial arts and combine them together to develop his own unique approach. I think that that's what's made him unduplicatable even to this day, is that what he did was so original and so unique and just so amazing that no one's ever been able to do it again, because he found his own unique voice by like copying or borrowing or taking different pieces from other people's very successful approach and putting it together in a new way. And for me, that encapsulates the best content marketers out there. They pick from different things that they see that are working, and they go like, wow, craft recipes, that's really interesting, and Pepsi, that's fascinating how they're doing that. And then they try to like put it into their brand and their team and their strengths and weaknesses and figure out a way that they can really take this to the next level, right? So I think the first tip that I have is always repurpose your best ideas. So we do this at AdRoll. We look at the white papers that are the most successful, the webinars that get the most attendance. We look at a variety of metrics and we repurpose them. We produce them again. We copy the Hollywood model of sequels, right? Like doing a part 2 is a tried and true way to take something that people like and get more business value out of the other end. It hasn't always proved to be the most creative way to achieve results, but it's to some degree guaranteed to at least get you what you did the first time. And of course, timing matters. The best example of this is holidays coming up. We're doing a lot of work to market and communicate and help our customers with their holiday marketing. Holidays tend to be really big for the retail season. Anybody who's in this space knows that like Black Friday, you've got to nail it, and that's where the majority of sales come for a lot of retailers. So clearly, like, timing is important. Timing your content marketing offers so that they fit with the seasonality, with the existing narrative, critical in order to get the kind of results that you want. Always focus on scalability. This is easy to say, but I think hard to do. People get excited about perhaps overly creative executions, and those things tend to be difficult to scale. I think scalable executions and scalable ideas are like blogging and 10 tips articles. Social media tends to be scalable, right? Digital advertising, very scalable approach. Not scalable, I think television advertising now has become unscalable. Like, you make something great, you get a limited audience, you try to reproduce it in places that show video, very difficult to do. Original content is most effective. So I think the Nanigans data report is the best example of this, that platforms and on the B2B side where you have original content, where you have data and analytics that no one else can access, and you find a way to release that, it's powerful, powerful stuff. When you're giving people data and information that they can use that they can't get anywhere, they clearly want it and need it and are going to use it and are going to find value. And then my last tip is always about shifting to the left. So you want to educate your audience, not yourself. And you'll see this constantly inside your company where people have content ideas. And a lot of the time what they're doing is talking about things they're excited about, or they're talking about things that are educating them. But you've got to remember who your audience is, right? So one tip is to always think about the lowest common denominator in terms of who your audience is, right? Like, what do they really looking for. If you're someone who's spending your entire life like focusing and refining and improving this product, you are going to be an expert on that product. The things that get you excited are not necessarily things that are going to get people who have a lot less experience and less information excited. So I always encourage people, like, take a step back and almost kind of dumb it down. Like, how do you make this simpler? How do you make this more attractive to people who don't spend 8 hours a day, 5 days a week thinking about content marketing or thinking about digital advertising or thinking about retail, right? You're just a consumer who's kind of like hanging out, looking for stuff. You want to buy some shoes, you just kind of buy it, right? You don't put a lot of effort or thought into it, and clearly not the amount of thought and effort that we do. So in conclusion, I want to thank NewsCred again, and I believe that there will be time at the end for Q&A, and I'll stick around and very excited to answer your questions. So thanks a lot, Liam.
Thank you very much, Gregory. That was terrific. I think you set a really good stage for exactly what I'm about to present. So just to start, I want to start with a statistic that we continually fret over as marketers. According to Sirius Decisions, 60 to 70% of content delivered by B2B marketers goes completely unused. And just like Gregory had said, it's more important than ever to make sure that the content we are producing is done so in an intelligent and an effective way. And this is something that we keep top of mind when we're developing our content marketing strategy. In fact, in our quest to learn about our effectiveness, NewsCred did a case study of our own where we checked our marketing efforts, and we proved that our marketing content directly influenced over $72 million in customer lifetime value. More so, we found that 90% of our deals touched at least one piece of content. So today, I want to go through some of the things that we do every day to influence sales with content marketing. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and start with a brief outline of how we approach the content that we fill our pipeline with. And then I'll go a bit deeper by looking at some actual examples and findings from our own newsletters and our nurturing program. And then to wrap it up, I'll go through some best practices. So let's jump right into our approach. It's not going to surprise anyone to learn that at NewsCred, we think quality content is king. And content marketing, it's not just another headcount in the social media department. In fact, content is the connective thread of all marketing. And it requires brands and marketers to fundamentally change their mindset. And it's not all just talk either. Content marketing generates 3 times as many leads as traditional outbound marketing, but it costs 62% less. So knowing this, how do we leverage our content marketing when it comes to newsletters and nurturing? Well, when we think about the challenges that we face as a company, the first NewsCred, there are 1,700 marketing technology companies out there, according to the latest Lumascape. So standing out is difficult. So how do you go about doing it? Well, when we look at the current state of the email landscape, most of the companies look, feel, and talk the same. Now, when you work in the marketing tech ecosystem like we do, the differences are clear, but as a consumer or a buyer, there's really no differentiation at all. So we have to do better. And this means that to really succeed, we can't just push our products and services at people. We can't just talk about what we do and how we do it. We need to think different. So to succeed in this new world, we need to take a new approach. And that new approach is you can't just push products and services out, but you have to use marketing as a way to provide value to people's lives. You don't just invest in multi-million-dollar annual ad campaigns, but instead you provide always-on content. And lastly, don't just think about reaching a target demographic, but instead think about how you truly connect with individual people. So that's enough with the broad strokes. Let's take it into the weeds and let's look at how it works with our email programs. So email is important to us. To date in 2015, 41% of our website traffic came from email, and I'm willing to bet this statistic is very similar for your companies. It's a vital channel for us, and as a result, we work really hard to maintain a high standard. So how do we continuously fuel our newsletter programs with valuable and engaging content? Well, exactly as Gregory said, we repurpose our best ideas, and one of the best ideas is our blog. And in fact, according to a 2014 HubSpot statistic, 78% of B2B marketers rated blogs as the most effective customer acquisition tool. And just like our blog, our newsletter content is a mix of custom and licensed content. And just so you get a view into it, custom content such as user-generated content or content that was specifically created for your brand allows you to share stories that are on brand and in your own voice. And then there's also licensed content, which is the kind that you can get through NewsCred, and it allows you to boost your credibility by leveraging content from, respected publishers, but it also allows you to boost your cadence by keeping your content pipeline filled with quality material. And so now in our case, we split our blog and our content and our newsletter 50-50. So we have 50% original custom content and we have 50% licensed content. Now, no matter what split you go for and whether or not you do all of one or the other, what is important though is that you know that your newsletter has to be driven by quality content, very same as your blog is. And I think this point is important enough to reiterate. Your newsletter is a powerful driver of traffic, but only if you provide your subscribers with consistently high quality content that's of value to them. So you've got to make sure you never take them for granted or assume that it gives you the ability to push sales messaging at them at will. Your newsletter subscribers have given you permission to send them valuable content, so you should always strive to honor that trust. So now that we've covered the fuel for our newsletters, how do we actually make it deliver results for us? Well, filling your marketing pipeline with quality content is only half the battle. You have to make sure that your emails are as effective as possible and that you're always improving. And so A/B testing is a fundamental part of this process. At NewsCred, we are obsessed with data, and we want to make sure that all of our programs are subject to extensive testing and optimizing. And the question is, how do you go about building a framework for this? Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through one specific example of an A/B test that we ran earlier this year, and then I'll dig a bit deeper into that. So what we have here is an example of one of our typical newsletters that we've been using several months ago. As you'll see, it's a pretty standard layout. You've got a hero shot for the first article featuring one of our original content written by our own account executive, Chase. And then the second and third articles placed in smaller columns. And then finally at the bottom, there is a text-based footer section. So when we approached this particular A/B test, what we wanted to do was see if putting it all in one singular column would improve the performance of the newsletter. And our theory behind this was, if by giving the top article top billing and prominent billing, were we lowering the chances of the second and third articles actually being seen and clicked on? And second to that, by doing this particular format, we weren't going with mobile in mind, which is undoubtedly something that we need to give priority to. So this was something that we decided to test against. And this is what we came up with. It was a very simple change, but what we did was we did one singular column and we had equal billing for each of the articles. So it's much more friendly for mobile. So what were the results of it? Well, interestingly, all of the articles received an increased number of clicks. We were actually worried when we did this test that by giving prominence to the other two articles, we would reduce the amount of clicks on the first article, but it turned out not to be true. Now, the meat of it, though, is that the second article received a 46% increase in clicks, which shows that by putting it into a different format, we completely changed the outcome of the article's success. And one thing that's worth noting is that when you run an A/B test, is that you have to look at all of the statistics. So sometimes you can find that a change has an effect that you didn't anticipate. And in our case, we found that the footer of the email, which is a space where we passively promote upcoming events like this webinar, for example, received 175% more clicks in the new version than in the control. So you don't have to go too deep into this and you don't have to consume this one too much, but this is an example of a scorecard that we use ourselves. And this breaks out different things. We categorize different things in our emails into different buckets, and we try and identify what is working and what is not. Now, your scorecard will look completely different to ours, but what is important is that you look for trends and you look for things that show success, and it allows you to shape your content journey for it. So what can you test? We tested this particular newsletter, but there's a multitude of things that you can test. And I'm going to go through just a few, just quickly go through them. Like, for example, subject lines. You can decide to try different subject lines and try different verbiage and see what happens. You can also do things like email cadence. We do our newsletters 3 times a week, but the question is twice a week more effective? Is 4 times a week more effective? It's going to depend on your audience, and it's something that you should test around with rather than assume. And then personalization, of course, is another thing. You know, is it going to have an effect on the open rate if you have a personalized name in the subject line or in the body of the email? Same goes for image sizes. You know, should you have something that goes on full width? Should you have something that's more designed for mobile? Should you have small thumbnails? Again, things like time of day. Is it better to send it out in the morning or in the afternoon or even in the evening in some cases? And another thing, things like the content lifespan. I mean, how long does an actual newsletter get a life out of? Do you get 2 or 3 days before it's time to start sending it out, or are they still clicking on links many weeks down the line? And then there's other things like text versus image. Is it better to have a very visually heavy newsletter, or should you have something that's purely text and personalized? Does the order of the articles matter? Does it really matter what is first, or is first always going to get the most clicks regardless? Does it matter how many articles you have in there? Things like title length. Does having a text link versus a button make more of a difference? Does truncating the copy make a difference, or should you have one sentence or a full paragraph beforehand? So these are all things. There really is no right or wrong way, but you really have to kind of look at the entire thing. And when we talk about testing and optimization, there's nowhere that's more important than in nurturing. Now, here at NewsCred, we run a comprehensive nurturing stream, and we're always optimizing it to improve performance. Before I go into the details of it, though, it's worth taking a step back. Now, this may seem like a simple question, but many companies approach it wrong. Nurturing is not a way to keep pummeling leads with sales material until you've worn them down, but it's a much more interactive process than that. So what is lead nurturing? At its most fundamental, it's a tool to help build relationships with your leads. So when a lead enters your system, particularly when you have a complex offering, they're not going to be ready to buy from you straight away. So in this day and age, a lot of buyers need to self-educate, they need to build trust with your brand, and this is where nurturing plays a key role. You need to give them the information that they need to learn about your offering or about you as well. And secondly, nurturing is to be ready when they are. So your leads are going to be in various stages of the buying cycle, and sometimes they may want to purchase, but they're working through budgeting issues. By keeping top of mind with your nurturing, it allows you to be there when they're actually ready to talk. So how do you measure success in nurturing? So typically in email marketing, you focus on an open rate as a key metric. But I find that when it comes to nurturing, this doesn't give you a good feel for how it's actually performing. The right subject line may get your leads to open an email, but if they don't interact with your content, then it hasn't succeeded. What matters is how they engage with your content, and for this metric, I use the click-to-open rate, which is the percentage of people who click through out of all those who have actually opened your email. If you aim to increase this metric, you're going to be providing content that your leads want to see. And the second point is increased MQLs, or marketing qualified leads. Now, this may depend on how you rate and score leads, but if you're using behavior as a scoring metric like we are, then higher engagement rate is going to push more qualified leads through to sales. Now, there's different ways, and depending on which marketing automation software you use, there's different ways to measure this behavior score, but you can do things like setting up triggers, so when leads are engaging more with your content, you can send notifications to sales, and it's a great way of pushing the right people through to sales at the right time. And the third sounds simple, but it's an easily measurable metric that has real meaning. By looking at the leads that are in your nurturing system, you're going to be able to see when they're performing more actions than previously. For example, if your leads download more white papers or read more blog posts or attend more webinars. And if you stick with these measures of success, it'll give you a good indication of how your nurturing stream is succeeding. So what do you fill your nurturing streams with? So, well, there's no magic bullet. There's many things that you can test to get the mix right for you. And for an example, we did an audit of our own nurturing stream, and we found some very interesting information. So when we looked at the engagement rates of our own leads, we found that in the earliest streams, the freshest and newest leads, they were engaging much more with lower friction pieces of content, such as slide shares, PDFs, infographics, than they were with high commitment pieces like white papers. Now, this isn't to say that white papers are a vehicle you should disregard. Quite the opposite, in fact. White papers are often found to be the most effective tactic in lead nurturing, but if you rely solely on them, you could find that your overall engagement rate is going to suffer. So you should aim for a healthy mix of things. And this makes sense if you think about it too. When a lead enters your nurturing stream through, for example, a white paper download, that doesn't mean that they're always going to be in a place to read another white paper. Sometimes they're going to be on the train on their way to work. They might be on their lunch break. They might be looking for something quick and digestible. By giving them lots of low friction options, you're going to help keep them engaged, and you're going to keep them opening your emails. And the other thing that we found when we did our audit was that we were not just providing our leads with we weren't providing our leads with an opportunity to raise their hands. Now, what this means is that sometimes streams are designed to run their course, but not every lead needs to run the full course of a nurturing stream before they're ready or before they hit a certain score when they graduate to being passed on to a salesperson. Sometimes you have to give them an opportunity to request more information. So here's a visual of how we rebuilt our nurturing stream, and hopefully it'll give you some pointers. So the first one, this is a very simplified model, but this is a typical nurturing stream, which promotes the best performing content, which in our case was white papers from our academy, with occasional product offerings in between. The problem is that this doesn't give leads a variety to choose from, and there's no indication that they're ready to begin looking at product emails at all. So what we did in our case is we moved the model to a more value-rich stream. And what you'll see here is that we provide a much more varied collection of articles and PDFs, introductions to our blog, and of course, the talk to us is hand-raising opportunities. So the stream may not be right for you, and it depends on lots of different factors, such as how mature your industry is, how complex the product offering is, but what you should do is look at it from a value add point of view. Nurturing is about building trust through valuable content and not bombarding them with sales material until they give in. So finally, I'm just going to go through some quick best practices, and we'll start with A/B testing best practices. So one of the things that's important when you do A/B testing, whether it's on your newsletter, whether it's on your website, whether it's anywhere at all, is that you should have a testing plan. And what this means is that you shouldn't just test for the sake of testing. You should actually come up with hypotheses, and you should plan them out to have different tests running at different times. Now, when you have a limited number, and for the record, you can run multiple at the same time, but when you have a limited number, it forces you to think about why you're running that test. It's very easy, especially with a lot of the A/B testing softwares out there, to just try having a red button instead of a blue button. But when you go about having a plan, you're looking to actually get an end result out of it, and you're looking for goals. And then secondly, make specific and measurable changes. So, when you're doing a test, don't change 10 different things on there. Change individual single things that will give you sort of direction about how people are going to affect, how it's going to affect their behavior. So what you want to be able to do is, on the outcome of it, you want to be able to say that this change directly related in this change in behavior. But if you have multivariate testing, which can be a dangerous territory, you can end up with too many things moving, and it's hard to pin down exactly what worked and why. And then thirdly, like I had previously said, is to thoroughly measure and investigate. So in our newsletter example, when we changed the order of the columns, it actually had an effect on the footer, which we didn't expect at all. So you have to look holistically at the entire of the experience and then see what worked across the board, because sometimes things can have a negative effect that you don't expect. And just for newsletter best practices, these are pretty simple, but the first one is treating your readers like VIPs. People who subscribe to your newsletter have given permission to have access to their inboxes, and you should honor this privilege by, firstly giving them quality content, but also letting them be the first to know about products, giving them special access to things, and basically special benefits that come along with that honor. And also be useful. So think about the emails that you open and delete. You don't open an email that doesn't benefit you in some way. So make sure that when you're programming out your newsletters and you're scheduling them, that you're giving them something that they don't already have. And no one wants to read dry and boring newsletters. So inject some personality. Try to write in the same way that you talk to your own customers. And then lastly, keep it short. Get to the point. Make it easy for your readers to scan quickly if they want to, and get to what they really want. And just some quick examples on how to create an email marketing plan. One thing that's important is who will manage. It sounds simple, but you really want to maintain the cadence, and you want to continuously be in a position to test. So make sure that when you've it set up, that you have set goals, set people, set responsibilities, because a lot of the time, because it happens in the background, it can seem very easy and that it may only take a few minutes, but you want to make sure that those few minutes are dedicated every single time. And then determine your content. Think about why your audience signed up for your emails in the first place. I keep going back to this, but focus on delivering it to them. It can be helpful to outline general content types that you might include in campaigns, or like in the case of our scorecard, look at things that are working and keep moving forward with those. And determine sending frequencies and goals. So not all sending frequencies are created equally. Decide what works best for you through testing, and for your subscribers. And remember to look ahead and plan accordingly for holidays and special events, but also decide what you want to get out of the email marketing. Are you looking for direct readers to your website? Are you looking to help promote sales? Are you looking to increase traffic at events? And then, lastly, make a schedule. Basically, have it set out, know what you're going to send and when, and make sure that you deliver on each one of those so that you build consistency with your audience. So that's it for me. I hope that was really useful for you. So we're going to take a few minutes for questions, but let's have a look. If you do have any questions, please feel free to add them in at any stage now. One question, by the way, that I do see coming in a lot is there going to be a copy of the SlideShare going out? Is there going to be a recording? There absolutely is. So, we're just going to take a minute just to see if there are any questions. I'm just going to see if there anything to stop me from talking too much, and I'll pass it over to Gregory. So there is a question here actually, and I think this this speaks to both myself and Gregory, and it's a question about reusing content, and how effective do you think reusing it is? Do you have any tips on recycling or repurposing old content? And I think you spoke to this point on a high level, Gregory, but do you want to go in a little bit deeper into it?
Sure. So my perspective is I take a more extreme view. I think than a lot of people like had experiences repurposing like content verbatim and had a lot of success with it. You have to do it in a smart way. But I've been in advertising a long time, and I would assume that you're not reaching everybody on the first pass. Frequency and reach analysis shows people need to see an ad 8 or 9 times before they even pay attention, right? So I'm not afraid of like repurposing things on Twitter, like sharing things over and over again. We used to take ebooks and chop them up and recompile them in different ways. I always thought of it as the greatest hits, like from an indie record label who took all the songs and repackaged them in 1,000 different ways. I think you need to be creative about how you do it, not be boring, and do it in a way that delivers value. And ultimately, I think end users, if the content's not valuable, they're just not going to view it, and that's fine. So there's a way for them to kind of filter out the things that just aren't going to work for them.
Yeah, I think I would definitely agree with that. I think it's, I suppose recycling and repurposing may be two different things, but, like good content should be expanded across as many different channels as possible. So if you do write, in our case, if you write a really good blog post, then you should try and turn that into a webinar, turn that into other things like, white papers or SlideShares. So I think that, the lifespan of it could be indefinite, but I think that you can sort of expand its reach by changing it into different, different channels. So there's a lot of questions coming in, and they're very specific. I think they're very industry specific. So what I might do is I think because we're kind of coming up on our time, I think I may respond sort of individually, or maybe there might be a blog post after this with some of the most frequently asked questions, because a lot of them are very, very tactical and they're very specific spam related questions and things like that. So I think we may just leave it there, and we may follow up individually, and we may kind of come up with something that sort of answers a lot of them. But I do hope this was really useful, and I really want to thank Gregory and AdRoll. I mean, that was fantastic. I think we're very synced in how we view content marketing, and I certainly learned a lot, and I even learned a lot about Bruce Lee, which I can say I did not expect coming into this.
I aim to entertain.
Wow, you won me over with Yoda. That's all I needed. So I think we'll leave it there. So thanks a million, Gregory. Thanks a million, AdRoll, and thank you to everybody who attended today. I really hope this was useful.
Excellent. Have a good day.